This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. As always, you are in the right place. And today, I'm enthusiastic. I'm excited to talk about this subject. And maybe you might not think so, that because this channel is about personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and as the title says, sometimes I think about death to live a great life. That might be a bad title for this, but it's accurate and it is true. And I'm going to go into a little bit into philosophy because I came to a philosophy that went along with a personal philosophy that I had already had, and it just enhanced an ancient philosophy, Stoicism. A lot of the Stoics dealt with thinking about death and using that to enhance their life. And let's talk about that. You know, I was a police officer for 35 years, and as a cop, I saw a lot of death. Even in upstate New York, working in a rural area, I saw a lot of death, fatal car accidents, suicides, and even more death in Los Angeles in the LA Sheriff's Department, working south central Los Angeles during the gang wars in the 1980s, the cocaine wars. A lot of death, a lot of shooting deaths, and a lot of death with my fellow partners, people I worked with. I can think of more than 10 people that I was pretty closely associated with that were killed in the line of duty. And as all of us get older, we deal with family, parents who pass away, and that can just the despair that goes along with that. I've experienced it, and all of us, if we haven't already, are going to experience that, and it can put us in a really, really dark place. It is the reality, and in our culture today, we tend to not even acknowledge the to think about death, and that does us, I think, a disservice in living a full life right now. And so I was watching something today where someone was talking about this very subject, and I thought, well, I want to do my next episode on this this matter, this subject. When things happen to you, especially when we're experiencing death of other people, obviously, and it goes along with the Stoic philosophy, right? It's not what happens to us, it's how we react to it. No matter what happens, it's not what happens, it's our judgment of those things that can cause stress in us. And so if we can just be in an attitude of gratitude, no matter what, even when we're dealing with these things, if we can keep our thoughts as being blessed instead of stressed, it'll really go a long way with giving us our abilities to be, for the most part, in a powerful state of mind. And not always. It wouldn't be healthy to always be up, to always be manic and always be in a positive state of mind, but we can, for the most part, mostly control that. And so, especially when we're talking about death and how I came, I used to think, because, in my experiences of death, when I experienced and I think about it, when it hasn't put me in a really state of despair and just a down, what I try to do is, okay, I'm still alive, and how can I honor those who have passed? What would they want me to do that I'm still here? And so we'll go into this later, but of course maybe it's because I'm getting older that I've turned to a stronger faith. I'm a Christian, believe in God, and I respect whatever you believe, and whatever, and we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And so I think that's true for all of us, no matter what we believe our faith is. And that's come to be a big part of my life. And maintaining a positive attitude, positive mental health. But I try to look at things, as a matter of fact, this next week I'm going to back to my hometown to participate in a golf tournament where we are celebrating the life of, I don't want to say celebrating, but it's in honor of two of my classmates who have passed away at a very young age. And one of the persons who worked with one of my classmates, he created this golf tournament, and it is a charity that they take the money and they give it to someone who is suffering from a similar ailment today. And the person that passed, the one classmate was a disease of it was in the area of multiple MS, and so that they in their names they do this charity golf event, and I've done some comedy events and helping raise money for this. And sometimes the person that has benefit from the money is there. But I often think of these two classmates of mine, and I think, well, what would they? I'm alive still, and they passed at such a young age, and so I go after life with the vitality when I think about them, when I think about my own mortality, and as we get on the other side of halfway through, it becomes more and more maybe in our minds. I took some notes because, I used to think, are these people? And maybe you've had this thought where you see, do these people act like they're going to live forever? I mean, they're not really. They're not living with gratitude. They're wasting time, wasting moments, not cherishing things, not cherishing, for the most part, family, friends, relationships. They're not cherishing those things which can fulfill our lives. They're not cherishing friends, family, and relationships. And I think to myself, what a wonderful life. No, I think to myself, I always thought to myself for many years, like, those people are acting as if they're going to live forever. They're not really. Don't they know they're going to die? And then I was reading some books by Stephen Pressfield, who he's most famous probably for writing The Legend of Bagger Vance. He wrote a novel that was made into a movie, and he's a Marine and a prolific writer, and he has a weekly. He does a weekly blog, and he posts videos now, and I was listening to him. And then he talked about a man named Ryan Holiday, who is because I started getting interested in philosophy, and he talked about Ryan Holiday, who was into Stoicism, and he started quoting some of the things that he said, and I said, hey, that's interesting. I had to check into that. So I started learning about Stoicism, and I'm going to go into that more later, but that was an ancient philosophy. It's pretty fascinating when you think about the philosophy, and Stoicism really deals with 4 pillars, right? Practical wisdom. So wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Now, people say, well, Stoicism is not Christian, but a lot of the Christian writings and people that wrote things that end up in the Bible, they actually took things from Stoicism. Wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Even Thomas Aquinas, his principles deal with those 4, plus he added 3. Christianity adds faith, love, and hope to give you the 7. But the 4 are in basically Christian theology. And so I started looking into the Stoicism, and when you think about the Stoics, the main Stoics that people read and study are Epictetus. Epictetus was actually a slave. He won his freedom, and he started his own school of Stoicism. So you have a slave, and then another one of the most famous Stoics was Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome. You got a slave, and then you got an emperor of Rome. You got Seneca, who was an advisor to Nero in Rome. And so you have these Stoics who span many years from Greece and end up into Roman culture, the Stoics. So yeah, those are kind of the four main Stoics were Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. But there was like four main Stoics, but there's the three I remember right now. And Marcus Aurelius he's famous for writing what they call the Meditations. And what's interesting about the Meditations was that he was out in the battlefield, and Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, but he was into philosophy, always into learning. He was a lifelong learner. And instead of writing about these great battles, and he was dealing, as the emperor, he was dealing with a plague. He lost 7 children, passed in as young children, and he dealt with a lot of things. But when he was out on the battlefield late at night, he would write things to himself, and these were writings. And the translation from the language he was writing came to be meditations, which the word that really was translated meant, thoughts to oneself. So he would write these notes to himself, thoughts to himself, and he would never meant them for publication or even sharing them. They were things that he was thinking and he wrote to himself, and which kind of makes him fascinating. And someone gathered those writings and they passed them on, and they were copied, and they have survived to this day. And many times Marcus Aurelius would quote Epictetus, who was before him. And a lot of what we're going to talk about, Seneca talked a lot about the shortness of life. Seneca talked a lot about thinking about death. And Seneca was in the time of, I believe he was born in the year 4, a common area. He was born basically the same time as Jesus. Matter of fact, he was kind of around also when Paul visited Rome. Seneca was also there. Paul came and spoke to a lot of the Stoics, and some Stoics were actually converted right then to Christianity, and many were not. And but they were open to what Paul had to say. Paul the Apostle. Matter of fact, they invited him back. We hope you will come back to tell us more about this Christianity, because they didn't know the Bible yet. And so they didn't know Christianity or Christ, but they were being introduced to it by Paul, who was visiting Rome. But the Stoics had a saying. Matter of fact, Ryan Holiday, and I'm gonna put a link into Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday he is a writer, and he is a man who has studied Stoicism for many years. He's kind of brought Stoicism back into the lexicon of today, and there's a modern revival of Stoicism as a philosophy. And so he talks about memento mori. Memento mori from the Greek days, the Roman days. Memento mori meant remember that you're mortal. Matter of fact, he talked about the greatest honor for a Roman is to come back after a battle and to go through the streets of Rome in a chariot through the crowd. But they always had behind these people, they would have a servant who was whispering to them, "Remember, you're mortal. Remember, you're being held in great esteem right now. You've done something great, and now remember you're mortal. You remember you're going to die." Marcus Aurelius would frequently say, "I must remember that I'm mortal. I must remember that someday I'm going to pass on. I will be forgotten. I will be buried in the same dirt as the person who cleaned my horse." And so he really always was trying to remind himself to be humbled and to not be so full of himself as could happen as the emperor of Rome. It could happen. Romans wanted people in their greatest moments to remember that they were human and that life was short. Matter of fact, Ryan Holiday, if you go to Ryan Holiday, and he has a podcast and he has a YouTube channel called The Daily Stoic, where he puts out quotations by the great Stoics on a daily basis. He's totally focused, more knowledgeable than I am on Stoicism, but I came to Stoicism and to study it through Ryan Holiday. So, as always on this channel, we give credit to where we got it. And so we give credit to Ryan Holiday, he's a genius with Stoicism. I mean, not a genius, but I mean, he knows it much better than I do. Here's a quote by Marcus Aurelius. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, what you say, and think. You could leave life right now. You could die right now, and let that determine what you say, think, and do. Epictetus had a saying similar. He said, if I should die today, let it be so. But if not, let's have lunch. In other words, he's saying, if I am going to die, I will die. But if not, let's live our lives. While we're here, let's live. Right now, I'm not dead. Let's live. There's a saying by one of the philosophers, right? An unexamined life is not worth living. And I've tried to adopt that philosophy so that every day before I go to bed, I reflect on the day. What did I do? What did I do good today? I think it was Seneca who said you should reflect on your life. At the end of each day, look back. What did I do that was good? What did I do that I could improve on? What did I do that was not so good? So that tomorrow I can improve on that. And so I reflect at the end of the day how that day went. And part of that, it's a good time because at some part of the day, we should be saying to ourselves, remember, we're mortal. Remember that we're going to die. And we don't do that in a morbid way to be depressed, but we do that so that we carpe diem, we seize the day. We live vivaciously with what time we have left. Let me quote Seneca here. This is from Seneca. You know, there's a book by Seneca the title of the book is On the Shortness of Life. And so he goes into a lot of these thoughts on death. Seneca said, we go through life afraid of some things as if we're mortal, but then we treat time as if we are immortal, as if we have an unlimited amount of it. You know, we will do a great deal. People will do a great deal. They will be people will be very frugal in protecting their personal property. But then when it comes to their time, they waste it. They're very frugal in protecting property, but when it comes time, the one thing that we can't get more of, the precious thing that is passing away each minute, we waste it. Should be the opposite, right? Don't worry about your personal property. Protect with frugality your time. That's why here, I respect your time. And that's why I want to create value, share it with you so that we are living as happy and as fulfilled as we can in this life. It's a great life, everybody. Seneca said, death is happening now. He said, don't see death in the future that you're moving toward. See that it's happening right now. So the Stoics believe memento mori, remember you're mortal, because when they remembered that, it put everything into perspective. It put their life in focus. Marcus Aurelius says that when you remember you're mortal, it shows you what is essential and what is inessential, what is not essential. And he has this test. Ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do blank? And then you fill in the blank. In this philosophy of remembering we're going to die, remembering we're mortal, so that we can seize the day is not just for us, it's for our family and those close to us. Marcus Aurelius said, when you tuck your kids in at night, when you tuck them into bed, say to yourself, they may not make it to morning. And this is not to detach or have no feeling. This is to actually do the opposite so that you cherish this moment right now. This moment with your kids. Do not take it lightly. Put a great value on these special moments. Cherish these moments. To be present. Don't rush through it. You're rushing through it. Then you're rushing to death. Slow it down and cherish these moments. I try to do this every day. I cherish. Let me be present right now, right where I'm at. I just had 2 friends who visited me here on the island that I worked with in the LA Sheriff's Department. I had them, I hadn't seen them until last year when they visited. 37 years that we really lost contact, lost touch, which happens. We work or we live certain places and then we go separate ways. And then these guys, these cats aren't really on social media, so I couldn't really connect with them. So, but we got talking via phone, and I guess they were keeping track of me. Well, one of them was keeping track through his wife, who has an account. So we hooked up again, man. After 37 years, they were here on the island, and we visited, and it was like we never had those 37 years not talking to each other. We picked up right where we left off, and we had a great 4 days. And this year was just as great. And it's so important. And one of the reasons why I cherished every moment they were here, and I stayed very present in what we were doing in our conversations, and put great value on that, is I'm reading a book, which I will share in another episode, but it's called the Harvard Study, where they studied 300 people. It's in its 80th year. And it's about happiness. And they've been doing these studies, and they took these 300 people from various walks of life. And these people have been interviewed several times a year, videotaped. They filled out surveys, and now they've studied their kids, grandkids, along these 300 people to come up with, what is happiness? How can we be more happy? And they've come up with some fascinating things that a lot of us probably have heard, and we should know already, that money did play a part in happiness when up to a certain amount. So like it was something like 75,000. Once you got beyond 75,000, money didn't play a big part in happiness. But up to a certain amount. But what did play a part in happiness was connection with other people. Connection, friends, family, a deep connection and communication, and connecting with other people. And they even went into social media saying it can be good. It can be a way to connect if it's active. If you're just scrolling through things, that's not active. If you're interacting with someone, maybe a family member who lives a long ways away, hey, I love the pictures of your grandkids, tell me more about them. If you're interacting and it's active, then actually social media can be a bridge in connecting with others, even though you're not physically with them. But nothing takes the place of being physically present with someone and connecting. And so when we're remembering to bring it back to when you think about death and you want to live greatly, sometime during the day, have that thought so that it puts things in perspectives. It puts your life in perspective, and you can gain great focus on your present. I took a note here from Ryan Holiday, who I give credit to. I'm going to put a link to his YouTube channel. And I have, I think, 4 of his books. Lives of the Stoics is probably the best one if you want to get into Stoicism and learn about Stoicism. It's a great philosophy that a lot of people are getting into it. He said a powerful part of memento mori is knowing that when you go to bed, you have done everything you can do that day. And when you awake in the morning, if you are so lucky, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. You've been given another day. You've been given another shot at it. And that's how I wake up every day, man. I'm in an attitude of gratitude, and I do that on purpose because, if you leave a void in your thoughts, in your mind, if you leave a void in there, we default to the negative. We are going to default to the negative in our thinking. And we're wired that way to survive. We were wired to think, hey, listen, there is a dinosaur around the corner. There is a caveman with a club that's going to come after me. So we default to the negative because we were wired that way to stay alive, to survive. But we are in modern times, and we need to override that predisposition to go to the negative to stay in the positive, because we know that our thoughts become things, and our thoughts affect our cells and our body and our health. And so we want to think with intention. Another thing that Seneca, he wrote in his book on the shortness of life. This is a quote from Seneca. But life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. When they come to the end of it, the poor wretches realize too late that for all this time, they have been preoccupied in doing nothing. Wow. Powerful. Powerful stuff. So I try to do that every day. I try to have that thought, memento mori. Matter of fact, Ryan Holiday, he has a coin that says memento mori to remind himself. He puts it in his pocket to remind himself. And he has great stuff on Stoicism. I'm going to talk about that in future episodes. But this episode, as titled, I think about death to live a great life. And when I think about, and I remember my dad, I remember friends, family, people have passed, and I take that thought and I put a judgment on it this way. I'm here. I am still here. I'm still alive. Wow, am I happy that I am? And so we can use those thoughts. We can use that thought, memento mori, remembering that we're mortal, to live with an attitude of gratitude, to know that if we think about being blessed and not stressed, then we're going to have a fulfilling life full of love. And that's the way to go, everybody. Hey, listen, if you enjoyed this, if you think someone else might benefit from it, please share it with somebody. That's what happens. I'm sharing today, I'm sharing thoughts that I was looking at or watching or hearing, and I said I was anxious to share this with you. And so please share this with somebody else. It helps. And if you're listening and or watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, click that bell along the subscribe button so that you get notified when the next video drops. And if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, subscribe to the podcast. It tells the computer, hey, people are interacting with the show, and we're going to show this to other people who are interested in personal growth, motivation, inspiration, philosophies for living a great life. I'll tell you right now, I love you. Thanks, everybody.